I'm Damien Fowler.
And I'm Eileen Sliffring.
And welcome to this edition of The Current Podcast.
This week, we're delighted to talk with Hannah Kelly, the CMO of Resy.
If you want to make a restaurant reservation, American Express-owned Resy is there for you. With over 40 million global users, the app has driven over 400 million reservations. Now that's a lot of fine dining, I imagine.
With almost 14 years of working at American Express under her belt, Hannah leads marketing efforts to connect restaurants and tastemakers.
We start off by talking about the value of customer data and how insights inform Resy's marketing strategy. We work in an industry where data is capital. How does Resy rely on the customer data, especially from its parent company, American Express?
Sure. So thank you so much for having me. And you could argue that the premise of the Resy acquisition was based on American Express's deep use of data. So when we look at spend at American Express, dining remains one of our highest spend categories. We reached $100 billion in spend for the full year in 2023 for the first time ever. So for us, being at American Express and in the business of membership, we are constantly looking for ways to engage and attract card members and deepen our relationships with merchants. Resy naturally presented that opportunity as a way for us to own an asset, own a brand, and build a community of being able to connect the world's best restaurants to the world's best diners on a proprietary basis.
That makes a lot of sense. I, as an Amex owner, do spend a lot in restaurants. I wonder if you have any interesting stories around turning those insights into action.
Sure. So we know that millennials and Gen Zs are worried about making the perfect reservation. In fact, we commissioned our own research and we found that 50% of millennial and Gen Z population are worried about making the perfect reservation. And so with that drove three sort of primary objectives and campaigns for us. So first is our brand platform. We launched a brand platform in 2023 called Reservation Ships, which is really meant to highlight how that Resy is more than reservations, really being that trusted partner in crime when you don't know where to go. You want to have that fine dining moment with your potential in-laws to be, with a new date. How can we really own the fact that Resy has served as that sort of curator and role? I think the second piece has been this past year, we introduced our Resy shareable hit list. So what that function allows you to do in the iOS app is anyone can go in and create a list based on any title that you want. Go to date nights, kid-friendly places, you name it. We have some very creative takes in there, and you can share them out with friends. So again, it's really meant to give users the confidence that they are selecting and making the best reservation possible for them. And we've extended that and really leaned into that a bit more with our third deliverable this year, which has been around the launch of our Discover tab. So now when you go into the Resy app, you not just only see a list of restaurants based on your location or cities. We've always had collections, but now our Discover tab actually brings in all of our editorial content into the app. And just for reference, in Q1 of 2024, we highlighted over 2,000 plus restaurants in all of our editorial across 300 stories. So now all of that content is there in formats that can helpfully guide users on how they can connect with restaurants that they should love if they don't know them already, and ones that they want to continue to celebrate their love for and be a patron of.
Retail data continues to have a moment among marketers. In your experience, how much do these insights influence your strategy? And what do you think is the future of this type of data?
So I think for us, guest research is the number one place that we constantly look to. And for us, a lot of that is where are people notifying, where are people searching, where are people dining. And at American Express, we're able to see where our card members are spending. And with Resy, we're able to see where they're searching. And we use that to inform anything from the restaurants that we go after on our platform. So being really thoughtful around what are the types of cuisines that might be missing? What are the types of underrepresented cuisines or restaurants that we need to bring onto our platform? So what's not being searched for? And then obviously our product offering. So as mentioned, really trying to tap into ways that we can not only help diners based on research that we've collected, but also by introducing the Discover tab, by introducing things like shareable hit lists. Those give us new avenues to really discover what are the trends and what are the capabilities and offerings that Resy can provide. And even more importantly, what can we pass to our restaurants that they could learn about guests that they might not be able to get on their own? So we think about it not only as what type of research can we use to improve the experience around discoverability and in restaurant dining, but also think about how we can use that as a differentiator for our partners and for our restaurants on our platform as well.
That's made me curious. What is the most popular cuisine that Resy users are making reservations for?
I don't know the exact cuisine type, but I can tell you we typically look at the types of cities that we see a lot of dining demand around, and we use that to really guide where we have a lot of our restaurant partners. We also really care about shining a light on underrepresented food types as well. So we did a ton of work during COVID-19 around highlighting the importance of Chinatown and the love stories of Chinatown, knowing that there is xenophobia happening as a result of the pandemic. Also in the spring of 2020, when we think back to the wake of George Floyd, looking at how we can really highlight Black owners and operators and chefs in our community. And that's something that we had always done. So we, again, look at what's been searched, what hasn't been searched, and really how we want to perpetuate the diversity and future of the industry in the best way possible.
You mentioned the site is more than a reservations app, and you're basically building kind of editorial and curated content. That's fascinating. Could you say a little bit more about that and how you target tastemakers and people in the know and those underrepresented kind of food types that you mentioned?
Sure. So believe it or not, we get asked all the time if restaurants have to apply to be on Resy and what the selection process is. There is no selection process. Any restaurant can pay to be on Resy. But I think the reason why we get that is because of how we are able to surface and highlight the restaurants on our platform in a way that goes beyond just the menu and when their hours of operation are. So for us, that's really thinking about the editorial stories as mentioned, where we have a whole entire editorial team that's dedicated to coming up with ongoing franchises like the one who keeps the books, which is our most popular, where we see our guests going in and figuring out of the top restaurants from the actual owners and operators when they release inventory, how they release inventory, and how best to get seated. Also longer form content as well. Beyond our edit, we're really an experiential brand as well. We'll do around 200 events by the end of 2024 with restaurant partners. Why? Because we know that our guests want to be able to experience restaurants and get that behind the scenes, behind the curtain look and feel. And our restaurant partners view us as a co-conspirator and collaborator. We meet with our top restaurant partners frequently. And instead of saying, hey, how is your performance with Resy? How are you enjoying? We talk about what are your 5-10-year growth plans? What are you thinking about in the immediate future that's keeping you up? What story do you want to be able to tell? What opening do you have? What new product? What front of house team member do you want to celebrate? And really use that to help guide and inspire how we create a lot of our content, not just for edit, but in real life experiences.
How do you connect those stories, the stories of the restaurants, with your own marketing story? I suppose that feeds into that in many ways. How do you strike a balance between telling those stories and your own story?
It's not about us. People care about Resy because of the restaurants on our platform. And I think Resy, when it was founded in 2014, really came out with a differentiated view, which is we want to be for restaurants by people from the restaurant community. And it's not about the dollar that Resy wants to take or make from the restaurant partners. So we've really maintained that not only in our business offering, but in our brand story. And when I look at the reservationships platform that we developed last year, it's not about Resy and about how great Resy is. It's about the relationships that we broker between restaurants and the broader industry and the community. So all of the B2B and industry support that we do. On the guest side, obviously building relationships and starting new ones between guests and hopefully restaurants that they want to become a regular with. And between our diners as well, celebrating why people love going out. And when we look at our editorial, we're trying to curate around insights and framing of how people are searching by what feeling they want to have, what types of vibes they want. Do they want to discover a new cuisine? Here's one that you need to figure out. So it's really about creating a platform and owning the fact that we are a network and that our restaurants are greater than us. And in doing that and having the right level of gravitas towards our partners, in turn, I think that's what has allowed Resy to become a little bit more of a darling than maybe some of our competitors.
So interesting. And in terms of like the results that you're seeing from this kind of integration of these different stories and balancing between restaurants and guests, are there any new innovations that you're looking at this year to kind of keep that in motion?
Yeah, I think this year, so the Discover tab and our shareable lists were really big launches for us this year. So it's really starting to think about what that ecosystem looks like and owning that as a platform for our guests in our restaurants to tell their story. I think also leaning into our relationships with our partners. So this summer, what's really exciting and a prime example of this is the Unapologetic experience that we push live with our partners at Unapologetic Foods. So for context, Unapologetic Foods is a hospitality group, Indian hospitality group based in New York. Very, very highly sought after restaurants such as Sema. And in fact, the New York Times did an entire story on how you could get into Sema.
I saw that, yes. Jealous of them all.
Which, by the way, the Resy Notified does work for Sema. I can't tell you how many friends have texted me to say, I got off the list at Sema, the feature works. I'm like, thank you so much for validating. Also, going early works as well, which you'll find in the one who keeps the books. But a prime example of this year and how we've really kind of put all these insights to practice has been when we met with Ronnie, the owner of Unapologetic Foods last year. He had really expressed a deep desire to try and get the word out and spread the word and love of Indian food outside of the major cities in the United States. So basically trying to make Indian food as mainstream as American or as Italian, and it's pretty underrepresented. He was like, crazy thought, but I just wanted to share that with you. That's what I'm really thinking about. We said, absolutely not crazy. Let's actually sit and think about how we could create a tour, what that experience would look like, really taking a nod and inspiration from him. His dream was to go on tour. We pulled on that thread. And this past summer, we have gone live in 3 different cities, LA, Chicago, and DC, at different Southeastern Asian cuisine spots. Those chefs collaborated with Ronnie and his team on a custom menu. There's content around it. And again, our job there is greater than Resy. It's greater than a reservation. It's really about unlocking something that was important to our partners. We had an hour-long wait at the Anna Jack Thai experience the first night. Even some influencers who were not asked to go, standing in line for over an hour, which again is a testament to, I think, tapping into a real trend, but that really coming from an authentic place from the restaurants on our platform and treating them as collaborators.
I just want to say I'm glad to hear that about Indian food because, I'm originally from Britain and Indian food is our number one cuisine. So it was always amazing to me that it was never that big in the US.
Yes.
Certainly, I think maybe New York it has been because there's special areas of the city. But in general, it's good to hear that.
It's not the same as Britain. It's really not. And I think with Ronnie, his staff and the front of house team, they take the time to really educate you. So if you go to Sema, they'll give you the menu. They'll assess what you're there for, why, but they have no problem demystifying and taking the lead on walking you through why each dish is special, why their biryani has a very special rice, which is different because of the region of India that the chef is from versus what you might see somewhere else. And calling attention to things that diners might not pick up on other than like, oh, I know I need to go here because it's a hot reservation. They really take the time to use that as an opportunity to tell a bigger story and hopefully make a bigger impact.
Yeah. Great.
Now, you spent 14 years working at American Express. That's like a tenure that's almost unheard of in today's working landscape, let alone marketing. And you've worn many hats along the way. How has this experience shaped your philosophy now as CMO?
Just the obsession over customers and really small businesses have been a highlight of my time. But I think if I could say anything, it's really being fixated on the mindset of your customer base that you're serving. And when I first started at American Express, I had come from fashion PR, which was very much, here's this asset, here's this piece, go pitch it, send out a sample, get it back. And it felt very transactional. I started on the open brand strategy team, which was our small business brand at American Express at the time. And the number one thing the team was focused on was this new report that had come out around what is on the mind of a small business owner. And the number one insight was, help me get more customers. And in that moment, I remember sitting in this conference room thinking, oh God, how is American Express going to tackle this? What do we do? And really, it was diving in and understanding they just need a day. They need a moment that's going to get people to go out and shop. So with the partnership of many agencies and teams internally, we came up with the most simple idea possible, which was Small Business Saturday. And here we are entering its 15th year. It launched with a Facebook page and really just anything possible to help get more business to small businesses was the premise. since that time on, and now almost 14 years later, I've always tried to think about what is that deeper, higher order insight that we have the opportunity to serve, and have translated that through all the many years and months of experience at American Express and now Resy. And Resy, we acquired and closed Resy in July of 2019. We're in the process of integrating the companies, making sure that we're keeping Resy and figuring out how we bring the best to bear of American Express. And then a pandemic happens, which brought our industry to its knees. So again, pulling on that same tool, what's the number one thing we needed to do? How do we keep our restaurants afloat so that at the other end of this pandemic, there are restaurants that we can serve on our platform? And with that, met the chief medical officer of American Express, figured out that we have a chief medical officer in American Express, and looked at ways that we could create COVID-safe dining behaviors. And that led to sponsorship of outdoor experiences across 45 restaurants within the state. So again, just I think really listening and being obsessed with the customer, it has paid dividends.
That's a tremendous legacy, 15 years of small business Saturday. That must be satisfying.
Yeah.
And then as you think about Resy now and building out that future, do you have goals that you want to achieve this year, 5 years down the line? And maybe, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Yes.
I'm sure you do.
Yeah. So this year is actually our 10-year anniversary at Resy. And it's amazing to see, to the point of all the growth that you cited at the beginning of the taping, like what we've had in that short period of time. And I think for us, it's really been because we've been that co-conspirator and partner to the industry. So for us, the next sort of chapter of Resy is really going to be harnessing that even more, which is when you are a restaurant and you're trying to think of how you can grow your business, how you're trying to get your story out there, who are you turning to, I want you to be thinking about Resy. And I don't want you to be thinking about Resy just from the sake of a table management platform or a demand network. I want you to be thinking about us as a critical partner in helping you scale, grow your demand, tell that story of a cuisine type, build an experience that only we could be able to partner with. And then from a guest side, when you have a dining occasion, I want you to come to Resy. Yes, of course, to think about that, but I also want to be the destination to help curate and really be the trendsetter that anytime you're trying to figure out what is happening in my city, a city that I'm traveling to, in the broader food industry at large, what does that mean? And I think a great example of how that is sort of coming to life now is as part of American Express's relationship with Disney, they actually approached us to think about how we could do a deeper integration for the season 3 premiere of The Bear. Why? The Bear, which is all about food. You have people at home now saying corner when they're cooking in their kitchen, and I didn't know what that meant prior to watching that show. They came to American Express because of our ownership of Resy and what we mean to that industry. So we actually hosted a private screening for American Express card members for the first episodes 1 and 2 of season 3 at Kasama, one of our LA restaurants. And that's really because these brands are looking to figure out how do we authentically play in food, and they're thinking Resy. So how do we continue to evolve on that? What does that mean? How are we meeting our customers, the industry where it needs to be, and really being seen as that sort of foothold?
That's amazing. That's the Hulu connection. That's fantastic. I read Anthony Bourdain's Kitchen Confidential many years ago, but it seems like people's interest in food and cuisine is hotter than ever, if I may say. What's your take on that?
Couldn't agree more. And I think that if anything positive coming out of COVID-19 was that it taught us all and showed us all the importance of restaurants and what they mean to us. So I think coming out of COVID, the number one thing that we heard and we've seen, and even as personally I felt, is wanting to go out and congregate and to be with people that I love, friends, coworkers, family, and restaurants are the gathering place for that. And when that was taken away, I think that was really indicative of what this culture is missing and the role that restaurants can play in that. And what you've seen is, I think, a genuine interest from the average consumer or diner who is just wanting to understand what the importance of those restaurants are, is like how they operate, how we can keep them in business, get that peek behind the curtain. You're seeing shows like The Bear emerge, and I think really indicates that reservations are a form of cultural currency, which is something that we talk about inside to Resy. So our job is to really harness that sort of cultural zeitgeist moment and really use that as a way to help prop up more restaurants, keep them in business, and drive more demand.
And that's it for this edition of The Current Podcast. We'll be back next week, so stay tuned.
The Current Podcast theme is by Love and Caliber. The Current team includes Kat Vesey and Sydney Cairns.
And remember,
it's about the relationships that we broker between restaurants and the broader industry and the community.
I'm Damien.
And I'm Elise.
And we'll see you next time. And if you like what you hear, please subscribe and leave us a review. Also, tune into our other podcast, The Current Report.